Hello, Rebecca.
Hi.
Rebecca, can I ask you to introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah, certainly. I'm Rebecca Crerar. I'm the charity manager at Suffolk Refugee Support. We're a charity, as the name suggests, in Suffolk, working with refugees and asylum seekers, all kinds of different support. In the good old days, it was a drop-in advice service, English classes, women's group, men's group, help for young people, employment support, all kinds of support really, all under effectively one roof.
Thank you. And thanks for joining me for this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time. I've got 4 questions for you.
Yep.
And the first one is one I ask everyone, which is how are you looking after yourself? And also, how are you supporting your teams during this pandemic?
Yeah. It's been tough, I won't lie to you. It's been stressful. It seems to go through waves. So at the beginning it was stressful because we were just up against this obviously everybody was up against this crazy, scary thing, and me included, sort of felt certain levels of anxiety and worry about what we were going to do work-wise, and it was all happening very rapidly. So we had to really close down quickly the office, and we basically just open one day, close the next, sent everybody home, and then moved to remote working. So we've been working sort of, I said to all the staff, you've got to do what you've got to do. You've got to look after yourselves. And if you've got other issues like children or elderlies or anyone you're taking care of and things that you have to do because of this lockdown, then do it and don't stress about work. We trust you to work. And that's what I said, we trust you to work when you can, but don't feel you've got to do your full hours if you can't manage it. And I think that is a real key thing, because I think some people, including myself really at times, have been a bit burnt out by trying to juggle too many things, personal life things. I personally care for my dad. So I've been working in the mornings and then going to him in the afternoons because his carer needs a break. But it then puts pressure on you, because then you're trying to fit a 35-hour-a-week job into probably 30 or 28 hours a week, which does make a big difference. So it's been hard, but we've been very supportive. We've let one guy go completely furlough, one of our staff members go completely furlough, because he needed to look after elderly parents who were shielding, and just that flexibility and trust has worked really well. So working on Zoom, people are using Zoom now. We use it all the time, and we've got WhatsApp groups as well that we set up. We've got mobile phones, and yeah, it's all, I think we've just about managed to continue actually a really good service via the telephone, so our clients know now to call us on the telephone.
What about yourself?
Myself, working from home. I set up my little office here, so I've got all my desk and my files all kicking around at the one end of the lounge, and luckily pretty good IT stuff, so without that, and I've got a very good other half who I yell at every now and then going, it's broken, I need help, so he'll come in and fix things for me, which is great. It has been a bit rough. It's been rough trying to justify living in a sort of a bubble, as in staying at home the whole time, but also going to my father's home because he has a living carer. He has some dementia, and so kind of justifying that, because obviously it seemed in theory that I was breaking the rules, but I was his carer in the afternoon. So, and staying in the garden with him and trying to stay apart from him when he didn't always really fully understand what was going on has been challenging. Having said that, when we did a few Zooms with him, he thought people were in the room with him, which was great. He said, where's everyone gone, when at the end of it? So that was really lovely. So I think trying just to balance having some time out, going for runs, that's my way to keep fit, is going out running. So trying to manage to do 3 runs a week, trying to spend time in the garden as well. I absolutely love gardening, and just the smell of the soil and just the flowers and everything growing, I think it's good for the soul. So that's what keeps me going anyway.
Wow, that's yeah. I love the detail, the sensory detail, and that was so important when you were describing about telling your staff, your teams, that you trust them.
Yeah.
Want them to look after themselves. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Second question is this. So how has COVID affected your client group, the people that you support?
Yeah, well, just like it has every individual, you know, they're still human beings just like we are. You know, having to deal with this was scary across the board. But I think for them, it was coupled with the fact that a lot of the time the information coming out obviously is mainly in English, and at first it was a bit slow to be translated. So we were trying to translate stuff ourselves so that our clients could understand it, and to know what they could and couldn't do. So there was some sort of lag really in the time that maybe British people who spoke good English were sort of starting to follow rules, and when our clients sort of picked up on that, because there was sort of getting that message across. We were very worried about some of our clients because some of them are obviously very vulnerable, living alone or single parents, and really, you know, who would be already going through anxiety for life because of the things they were going through with their asylum claims and not having English, not being connected to a community. And so we identified about 30 clients who really needed extra support, and so we've been phoning them every week. We allocated clients to each of our advice staff so they have a sort of a caseload that they are keeping on top of to make sure those people's well-being is okay. Obviously things like financial problems have come up a lot with people not knowing about jobs, losing jobs, and also things, benefits issues that they couldn't get help with. Childcare, that's been another one, you know, keeping children busy. That's hard when you don't speak English and you can't communicate very well with the school. So how can you support your child to do homework or work from home if you yourself don't understand it? I think that was maybe true for some British English speaking parents too. How do I do this maths class with my child? But even more so for our clients. And just like things like practical things like IT support has been really difficult. Some of them don't have internet connection, certainly don't know how to use Zoom or some of these packages where you can connect with people. So there's been a whole raft of issues really. A couple of people were even homeless, you know, and they were sofa surfing. So they were contacting us because the families they were staying with were obviously reluctant to let them stay because they were a risk and they were worried that they were going to be in trouble as well. So trying to get the Home Office and the support services to pick those families, those individuals up was difficult. And then the individuals were nervous too. So it was kind of a two-way thing that there was kind of problems all round, unfortunately. But it's sort of settling now. And I think as with the actual, you know, everyday population, I think everyone's starting to get into a routine and it kind of becomes a way of life, doesn't it? And you get used to it. So I've just been counting up actually how many appointments that we've had over the telephone, and it was, let me just get my numbers, it was for a different report I was writing, but from April through to June we've done 1,858 telephone advice services, and that's from our staff working from home, responding to telephone calls and making telephone calls to clients, asylum seekers and refugees, across masses, just a whole range of issues. So a lot of support.
That's astonishing, because I know you don't have a big team either. What really gets me is that I knew that about the language issue, but you've added so many other layers of the needs of this particular community. I hate to think what their situation would be like if we didn't have your organisation in place in Suffolk.
And like the young people, for example, you know, we have a large number of unaccompanied asylum seeking children, mainly sort of 16 to 18-year-olds who live in Ipswich mainly, who are looked after. They arrived without parents, without family members with them. So they're very alone, living in shared sort of accommodation, hostel type accommodation and shared houses. And those kids are cut adrift, you know, they don't have school to look after them. They don't have a social life, and you know, they are climbing the walls and again not understanding the rules, taking undue risks, going out when they shouldn't have been going out at the beginning. So you know, we were very concerned about them and their mental health as well as, you know, everything else. So that was a big challenge.
Thank you, Rebecca. Very sobering. My third question is related to that, in that what are you doing to support your clients in this pandemic? I suppose you've spoken about some of that.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe talk a little bit more about a specific area of the work that you've been doing?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much. I don't know which bit to pick on. Obviously, we've run our telephone service and just talked about that. We've been running various different groups as well. So we've been doing our skills exchange group, which is an online, mainly online. I think they are going to meet in small groups now occasionally. But it's trying to get our refugees to share skills that they have for the benefit of others, and also volunteers to share. So it's a two-way process, because one thing we've been very conscious of is that, you know, refugees and asylum seekers are looked at these poor people as these poor people who, you know, just receive and receive and receive and need all our help. But actually, they are some of the most resourceful, incredibly talented people in this entire world, really, because the fact they've escaped from what they've been going through, that, you know, yes, to a certain extent it's luck, but a lot of it is also resourcefulness and ability. And they've come from lives where they had jobs, they had skills, they used, you know, all kinds of things, really good cooks, really good construction skills, all kinds of things, artists, poets, dancers, all kinds of skills that these people had.
Yeah.
And so trying to get them to share, we've been doing a bit of that work whilst the COVID's been going on, and we want to obviously expand on that more and more over the next few years. Then sort of practical help as well, that, you know, I'm very much of a practical person, as I expect you realise. I can't be dealing with lots of hot air meetings talking about stuff. I just want to get on and do it. So we got some computers set up for our clients who didn't have computers, with some funding that came through from the Suffolk Community Foundation's COVID appeal. So that was really, really good. And we managed to take laptops out to a whole range of people and get them set up. And it wasn't just giving them a laptop, it was setting those laptops up so that they could actually use them, teaching them to use them, getting the data packages for them as well, because that was something we suddenly went, oh gosh, what if they haven't got broadband or internet or Wi-Fi? How are they going to use these computers? You know, great, I've got a computer, I can't actually do anything with it. So it was quite involved, that work. On top of that, things like bicycles, we've delivered 5 bicycles to young people so they don't have to use public transport now the lockdown's relaxing a bit and they can start going back to college and join small sports groups that we're running some of those as well in the park now, little groups like boot camp groups for 4 or 5 young people. And things like art equipment, we've delivered some art equipment to people who just are bored in their flats, you know, not having a garden as well. I mean, that's one thing I've really appreciated, as I said earlier. And so being able to do a bit of art and something creative has been, you know, really nice for those clients. So there's so much stuff we've been doing. So that's just a touch on it all. Anyway.
You are indeed creative as an organisation and as an individual, Rebecca.
I don't know about that. I do have a really good team, I have to say. They never fail to amaze me, and I mean that. I'm just really proud of them. You know, they just do a really good job.
You clearly give them the room to be creative, which is
well, you know, I trust them.
My last question, Rebecca, is I suppose an opportunity for you to get across a message to our system leaders. Mm-hmm. What do you think the learning will be, or the challenges from this outbreak going forward?
There's all kinds of learning, I think, on a personal level and on a organisational level, and, you know, just from ideas that we now can use remote working a lot better, something we would never have bothered looking into, never have time, you know, but now we've been forced to. We realise it works, hence we're talking this way at the moment. Yeah. I never would have done this before. I've been like, no, can't do that, way too technical. So that sort of learning has happened. I think one of the things, it's not quite learning, but one of the things that really bothering me is that as charities we all struggle with finances, and that's the big bugbear, you know, get any charity leaders together and that's all we ever seem to talk about is where is our funding coming from, you know. So and there's been an incredible amount of generosity offered by various outfits and leaders, councils, to cover this COVID period. Lots of money, millions and millions of pounds has been offered, but it's all to get your clients through this pandemic. And we looked at our costs for getting people through this pandemic, and actually they're relatively small. They're small. You know, we had to buy IT equipment, we had to buy phones. We're now having lots of PPE type equipment so that we can hopefully open our office again at the end of July, just to a small number of clients. But the long-term funding issues do not go away. And nearly every funder that we've been in contact with has said, oh, we've got this lovely fund, it's for a pandemic, it's for COVID, and you have to spend it by generally it's by the end of the year or by April next year. And we're like, well, what happens after that? You know, we have to start forward planning now for next year. We should be fundraising, and we are fundraising for next year's, just running our services. We don't exactly know the shape they'll be, but hopefully, you know, when the pandemic hopefully goes away, we'll be able to open up and get back to relative normality. But there's so little being offered at the moment that my fears are for the future, the longer term impact of this. And I think, you know, that if I could get one message out would be to funders, you know, yes, thank you so much. And I'm not trying to detract from the fact that they've given us and given lots of charities help during this awful period, but also for the future. You know, please don't take your eyes off the future and keep your programs open for the longer term work that all these charities, including ourselves, are doing, because it's so vital. And, you know, we don't just want to get through the pandemic, we want to keep going. And we know that the fallout from what's been happening over the last 4 months is going to go on for years. And it will hit people like refugees really hard, because they'll be the ones losing their jobs with factories closing down and, you know, various parts of the economy shutting. It will be their children that will miss out on schooling the most. It will be their health that is affected by not accessing support during this time. And it's a long-term issue. It's not just during COVID. So that's my point.
Well, really well made as well, Rebecca. You're echoing literally tens of thousands of people in your position, saying exactly the same thing. And I think nationally, that what's been offered so far, as you say, is only for the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's been made very clear as well, hasn't it? We do need a solution, a way forward outside of it as well. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, really well made. Thank you. Yeah. And Rebecca, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Andy. Very nice to talk to you.
Thank you.